Hi, this is Kevin from Personal Finance Lab. In this video, I'm going to give you the most important personal finance advice you might ever receive in your life. This is what I'm going to call your personal finance mantra. These are the things that you need to drill into your subconscious. You need to chant them to yourself every night before you fall asleep. This is what you absolutely need to know in order to master your personal finances in the long run. So, let's get started. This is your mantra number one. Pick your battles. You need to choose what you want to spend your money on. That might sound obvious, but it comes into a very, very real scenario for every single person as soon as they start earning an income. You can't have nice things everywhere. You have to pick what's important to you and focus on that. When you decide that something isn't important to you, keep that in mind. That's not where you want to spend your money. Let me give you a concrete example from somebody that you know in the real world. On the left, we have Bill Gates, one of the richest men in the world. He spends his money investing it in his companies, he spends billions of dollars on philanthropy, and what he clearly does not spend money on is fashion. It's one of the most common jokes that have been about him since the 90s is he looks like he got all of his clothes out of a bargain bin. On the right, we have a house. It looks like a nice house, but it's owned by Warren Buffett, the richest man in the world. He bought this house in the 50s, and he spent about $31,000 on it, and he has not moved since. He very easily could afford a bigger house, a nicer house, a house with whatever he wants in it, but he just decided, you know what? My house is not the most important thing to me, so I'm not going to spend my money on it. I'm going to spend my money reinvesting it. I'm going to spend my money on acquisitions. I'm going to spend my money traveling around the world, but I'm not going to spend it on my house. This applies directly to you, too. Here's another more concrete example from me. This is my computer. I use this almost all day, every day. I play a lot of games, I do a lot of work. I put a lot of money into building my computer and I decided it was something important to me. On the other hand, this is my phone. It's about 3 years out of date. I use it pretty much every day as well, but I decided having a most up-to-date phone on the market is just not that important to me compared to my computer. So I spent about $600 about 4 years ago buying a phone, and I have not had to spend $1 on one since. You need to decide where you want to spend your money, because once you decide you want the best of everything, you're going to end up with nothing. Mantra number two, and this one is one that took me a long time to learn. Every dollar you spend is financed, whether you realize it or not. Here's how it really works in the real world when you start earning money and start living your life. Now, what do I mean by every dollar you spend is financed? Look at it this way. If you have $1 in your pocket, you can spend it today and get $1 worth of use out of it. That's fine. But in 5 years from now or 10 years from now, you're going to need a loan for a car or a house. For a car, you're probably going to get between an 8 and a 10% loan. And that's the annual interest rate you're going to have to pay on that loan. If you have a house, it's probably going to be between 5 and 6%. Which is very relevant to everything that you're earning today. Because you have to pay these interest rates on the amount borrowed. That means any amount that you're able to save today is going to reduce that amount borrowed, so in the future you have to pay far fewer financing charges. This gets even trickier when you're talking about either saving your money as cash or investing it in the stock market. Because if you save your money as cash and then you're looking down the road and trying to avoid extra financing charges, that cash will directly go down and reduce the down payment you have to make. However, if you invest it and you're able to earn some sort of return on it, that reduces the amount that you have to borrow even further. You can effectively get a negative interest rate for a few years. So for example, if I put my money into the stock market today and have it grow at 8% for 5 years, when it comes down to me buying a house, that means I'm getting a few extra years interest-free using that money I saved, because I'm just reducing this return from the interest rate that I have to pay on that financed amount. When it comes down to the end of the day on how you're actually spending and saving your money, all this means is, remember, you're going to need this money later. You're going to have to borrow it at some point. So it's not just, is this money going to be reduced from my savings account, or is this money going to be something I'm not investing? It's how much will this money impact my need to borrow later, and how much I'm going to have to pay in interest over the next 30 years. Mantra number 3, be ready to go to Tokyo. This means you need to have a rainy day fund. Your rainy day fund over the course of your life is going to change dramatically depending on how much you earn and what your normal expenses are per month. But if you're just in high school, if you're still in college, your goal should be, if I absolutely needed to, could I go to Tokyo for a week? If there was a life-threatening emergency, am I able to swallow that kind of cost? So if I pull up Expedia right now, I see a decent flight from where I am, Chicago, to Tokyo is going to cost me about $2,000 for that week. So that means if I want to be ready for that kind of trip, if I need to be able to eat some big last-minute cost, I'm looking at about $2,000 that I should keep in my checking account ready to go at any time. Now, the Ready for Tokyo mantra is what I used all the way through high school and college, and it made it so I was able to swallow basically any cost I needed to: emergency family travel, car trouble, needing to buy new computer supplies when they broke down and I needed to have a report published. But once I started to get a real job, the rainy day fund just becomes a percentage of how much you earn each month. Usually you'll want to have about 2 months of salary set aside for some huge emergency that you didn't see coming. And when it comes down to it, is if you want to spend 20% of your monthly income on just random stuff that you buy on Amazon, you can. It doesn't make that big a hit in your saving or spending plan because you only have to spend 20% on your living expenses. This is not really a goal that you're going to be able to hit easily or quickly. This is a kind of goal that you should be looking at for long term over the course of your adult life. Realistically, when you graduate, you get your first job, you're going to be spending 60 or 70% of your income just on living expenses. As your income goes up and you get a little bit better at managing your money, that money is going to slowly trickle down to 50%, to 40%, to 30%, and hopefully at some point you can hit 20%, and that's where you really need to be by the time you retire. Mantra number 5. This is one I need to tell myself probably the most often, and this has nothing to do with your self-esteem, but you need to remember you don't necessarily deserve it. Anytime that you want to spend money that is not in your budget, anytime that something comes up that you didn't plan for, there's going to be a voice in your head saying you can get it because you deserve this. You earned it. You're worth it. This voice is trying to sabotage both you, your finances, and pretty much most of your life. If it's not something that you already kind of have figured into your budget, don't do it. This is extremely important. I cannot emphasize this enough. This is the sinkhole that most people lose all of their money in. You'll say to yourself, I've been good this month, or it's not that big a deal, or I can make up for it next month. If you don't already have this set aside in your budget, where it's not money that you've already kind of allocated towards investments, it's not money you're allocating towards your spending, it's not something you've allocated to your rainy day fund, buying it is a terrible, terrible, terrible idea if you can avoid it. Amazon binges, going out to the bar last minute with friends, all those things is what destroys long-term budgets. Because they add up. You'll never repay yourself back. You won't control for it later, because if you couldn't now, you won't later. This applies to basically everything else I've said throughout the video. If you make all of these unnecessary purchases that you didn't plan for, it's going to hurt your spend 20%. You'll never get there. You're going to have to finance that later. If you want to buy a house in a few years, a couple months of, oh, I deserve it, is going to mean another $10,000 that you're going to have to pay back with interest. If you're making these purchases on credit card, you're going to have to pay them back with interest almost right away. Just don't do it. This goes back especially to your spend 20%. Make sure you have a bunch of money in your budget and your spending plan each month set aside for just stuff that you want. A budget is not supposed to be a religious document forcing you to save everything you possibly can. A budget is supposed to be laid out knowing how much in a month am I just going to spend on myself? How much am I going to spend on going with friends? How much am I going to spend for Christmas shopping? Keep that in mind. Keep it in your budget and don't go over. That's all there is to it. If you see something that's on sale and you've already used up the money you wanted to spend for this month, don't buy it. Wait until next month and put it in that budget. That's really all there is to it. It sounds simple, but your impulse control is going to be put to a massive test trying to follow this one. But I can say that if there's anything else that you take from this video, this is the one to remember. So good luck with your personal finances, and I hope that you are rich and wealthy beyond your wildest dreams by the time you're 30.